Hi guys, welcome back to the Australian Formula One podcast. Pep, we've just finished a video on, unfortunately, the sad demise of Honda. And as we know, there's been a lot that's been going on in Formula One this week. But before we get on to that, I'd just like to touch back on the Honda issue on a closing note. I thought it was interesting, mate, that Ross Brawn has almost orchestrated the capture of the F1 Ferrari engines for whoever buys the team.
Using his connections, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was rather interesting, mate. So
yeah, Ross Brawn, as far as I've read anyway, gave the speech to the whole team saying that we're going to move ahead. Nick Fry and I think Nick Fry obviously said a few words, but basically they both fronted the team and said, we're going to move ahead, mate.
Yeah.
We're going to try and find a buyer, and okay, they've only got something like 4 weeks, but yeah, they've, like you said, Max, he's used that Ferrari connection and said, well,
that's the carrot, isn't it?
Yeah, by the way, whatever chassis we have, we're going to have a Ferrari engine. So, and by the way, you know, 2007's a little bit open. Sorry.
2009?
Yeah, 2009 is very open, so, you know, let's go racing, but who knows what will happen, mate.
Yeah, I don't think they have the time really to put another manufacturer's engine in their car and redesign the chassis. But look, either way, it'd be great to see that team or a team on the grid next year. But bye bye Honda, as we know it.
Yeah, exactly, mate. So what we've got now, of course, is Max Mosley. He's just moving ahead, mate. He's decided that F1's too expensive, and that he needs to be a little bit responsible. I'm looking at Max Mosley's comments, you know, and he's saying we're the patrons of the sport. We need to make sure that it's an ongoing concern, and the current costs are too big. So he signed up Cosworth. He's had his tender, and Cosworth has an engine deal. And mate, like I said, he's just getting on with it.
Yeah, he sure is. But I guess when I look back at it, as I think a lot of you guys will as well, these problems have been, the talks of cost cutting and all that sort of thing has been around for many years now.
Yeah.
And it's obviously taken this credit crisis, and in particular with Honda withdrawing from Formula One. I mean, that's a big sledgehammer.
It gives him more ammunition,
big
doesn't
time.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is obviously, or could be, the current economic climate, that is, the driver for change. But we know we've got a whole slew of new regulations next year. But Pep, one of the things that you brought up a moment ago that we're going to talk about is that Cosworth have won the tender.
Yeah, so basically, you know, you guys would have read that Cosworth is saying that they'll supply engines, and as more teams sign up, it gets cheaper and cheaper. And at first, you know, I thought, you know, no standardised engines in Formula One, please. It was just a bad idea. But the big thing in this regulation change, Max, as we talked about earlier off camera, was that other teams can still build their engines, and that Cosworth is just kind of, well, let's face it, Max, it's a bit of a filler at the bottom end of the grid, but they're providing engines that are relatively cheap, and so the teams can
still be viable.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Look, I'm totally against customer engines. I think I've made my points pretty clear on that in the past. Personally, as I was saying to Pep off camera, I'd like to go back to V10s but put slicks on them, but that's a whole other argument. But I'm not a big fan of customer engines, but I can actually understand why the FIA are doing that when it comes down to cost cutting. But the one thing that I do like about this proposal is that you can still use your own engine.
Yeah.
You don't have to do or use a customer Cosworth engine. So yeah. I'd rather that than everyone having to use the Cosworth engine, because then it becomes a spec event.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that, you know, if the top 5 or 6 teams build their own engines, their own chassis, and then maybe at the bottom end of the grid, I mean, we've got it now pretty much. Engine manufacturers supply up to 4 cars or more, so it's not a big jump really. So hopefully we'll get a good compromise, and people can build chassis, they can build engines and compete. But still, F1 becomes viable economically, Max. I mean, we know about the business side of F1. We know as well as anyone that you have to be able to run it viably. Hopefully they can, mate.
Oh, look, you're right, and I think this might see the the proposed introduction of a pro drive, or perhaps once the economy kickstarts itself again. I mean, hopefully this, because of the cost-cutting measures, hopefully this will help attract other manufacturers into our sport. But the interesting thing I find as well, Pep, which another thing we discussed off camera, cutting engines or having standard drivetrains and standard engines and the like for a certain number of people on the grid. I think it's, I mean, it's interesting that there's other areas of Formula One that cost could be cut. I mean, just to put 2 cars on the grid costs however many million euro.
Yeah, there's so many upfront costs. Thanks.
Here's a cost-cutting measure. Cut it down to 10 million euro to compete, to put 2 teams on the grid.
Do you think Bernie needs to lighten his wallet a little bit, Max, and not take so much up front?
He's got more money than God.
Yeah.
I mean, the bloke couldn't actually physically spend the amount of money that he's got before he dies. He couldn't do it.
You're right, Max. There's so many cost-cutting measures.
Cost-cutting measures?
Cost-cutting measures
I
that
knew what
could
you
be
meant.
done.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and it's like, I just don't want our sport done down. I mean, we're going to get like an A1 GP style push-to-pass button next year. We've gone back to standard wings and all that sort of thing.
Standard engines,
you
brakes, tyres.
Yeah,
we don't want it. Yeah.
As I said to Pep, I'm old school. Some would argue that you might want to bring back the V12s. But I'd like to bring back the V10s, put them on big fat slicks and build tracks that would excite us and allow those cars to compete. But that's just my opinion.
Alright guys, well let us know what you think. It's great that they're talking about it nonetheless, Max, that the powers that be are talking about this. Hopefully we'll get some decent regulations and not sit here and say, oh shit, what have they done this time?
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.